Here we go. Kia ora everyone, welcome to Board Talks. My name's Rose, I'm the CE of Community Governance Aotearoa. And just as everyone is joining us, if you'd like, please let us know your name and organisation that you're representing. As you can see, we've got Simon and Simon today. So we've got Simon Wi Rutene and Simon Telfer, and they're saying hello as everyone's joining as well. So kia ora. Okay, we've got a fantastic talk for you today, all lined up. It's about landing that great governing role. We've got two fantastic, well-experienced guests with us today, so I'm super excited. We've had over 250 people register for the talk, so we will ask you to keep yourselves on mute. Our talks are free, but we've also got a lovely new sponsor, so thank you, catherder.com. You can check them out. They help with some board and administrative services. Lots of people coming in from everywhere. Waiheke, kia ora Mark. So just as you're taking your time settling in, just share a bit about Board Talks. So Board Talks was created a couple of years ago, and they're bi-monthly talks just around bringing to light some thought leadership on topics that us as a not-for-profit, for-purpose, community organisations need to have. Our audience is growing. Just with Board Talks alone, we've had over 1,400 people join us and register, and we're back for 2024. So we do love having these talks, and we love having you with us. So lots of people. Who else do we know in here? Lots of different people joining us. So like if you're just joining us now, if you'd like to share your name and organisation that you represent, you can do that. And use the chat function if you can, please. Okay, so Board Talks, it is designed to be informal and engaging. We like to keep it real, not too much kind of lingo. We just like to kind of get into it. But we are going to spend a little bit more time getting to know these two guys a bit more because they've got absolutely fantastic careers. So we thank them for their time. Just as we everyone's coming online, we are going to do a quick poll today because we want to see just what's brought you to the talk, and it's going to help guide our conversation as well. Sorry if you got a bit of reverb going on there. Kia ora Ginny, kia ora John, Hart City Council. So I think April and our team is going to pop up our poll. Just answer one question. So I'm going to read this out. Board Talks for February 2024. Where are you on your governance journey? I'm looking for my first board role. I'm looking to take on more board roles. I'm looking to move from not-for-profit to public sector director roles. Or I'm keen to learn what community governance is all about. So community, not-for-profit roles, committees, advisory, that kind of thing. Let's see, so if you can take some time, we'll give just a little bit of time if you'd like to participate in that poll. It'd help us with understand who's on the call today. Kia ora Alba from Motet. Payrolls. Okay. What we might do is share the results. Here we go. So we've got 24%. So we've got about 71 people online, and I'm thinking hopefully everyone's had a chance to do this. So 24% are saying are looking for their first board role. 40% of our audience are looking for more board roles. Those are eager people, and 24% are looking to move from not-for-profit public sector director roles. It's fantastic. And 12% want to know just a bit more. So sounds like we've got a pretty engaged, experienced audience with us who've got quite a lot of experience in looking for some more roles in governance. So that is great to know and will help the conversation today. Right, so we're going to get to it. We're going to bring in our two panelists today, which we've got Simon and Simon. So Simon Telfer and Simon Wi Rutene. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora. Great to be here, and look forward to sharing some insights as we get underway.
Awesome. So, Simon?
Kia ora koutou. Ko Simon Wi Rutene toku ingoa, ko ai au, he uria te tanga maha ki Ngāti Porou me rongo whakata, te kai tohu tohu mā tāmua o te taiohanga. Hello everybody, I'm Simon Wi Rutene. It's great to see you all there online. I'm of Ngāti Porou, Taitanga Mahaki and Ronga Whakata descent, and I am the Principal Advisor at the Treasury for Commercial Performance and Governance. So really looking forward to spending some time with you today. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Simon, and we've got some very close whakapapa, don't we, Simon? So most likely whanaunga. So thank you again for sharing your time with us, and our audience is here because we are kicking off the year and we've probably started with lots of like, how do I get an awesome new role, or how do I find some organisation I'd like to work for, or get a paid gig maybe. So it's really good timing to kickstart this in the year. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Simon Telfer if you can go first. I'm really keen if you can share some backstory about who you are and how did you come to create Appoint Better Boards as well. I'm really keen on that because I've followed you for about the last 10 years or so, and you know you're now in a place that you're giving back to others, helping them in their governance career. So what was your kind of journey in this?
Kia ora, thank you. I know Simon's in Ōtautahi Christchurch at the moment, and that's where my governance career took off. It started. I didn't realise at the time because I was in the 7th form at Burnside High School, which is year 13, and there was this new thing called Tomorrow's Schools, and they were setting up a governance model that had a student representative. So I was elected out of which was the biggest high school in the time at the time, 2,000 students, and ended up in this thing where I was student rep on the board of trustees with the principal and a whole lot of senior people. And that sort of started my journey, which was really interesting. And then I was fortunate enough to live overseas for quite a long time. I worked in London, I worked in San Francisco, and I worked in Dallas and worked in Melbourne. That sort of shaped me and gave me an international perspective. And coming back to Aotearoa, New Zealand with a family in 2007, I looked at that learning that I'd had and wanted to sort of share that rather than be pinned down to one company. And I shared that in an advisory way. So a lot of times I came back and started advising and then sitting on the boards of organisations, predominantly privately owned businesses. So that was my entree there. Because I'd come from a strong recruitment background, I brought more of a human and a people focus to my board discussions. Over that time, you know, as we were in Tamaki Makaurau for a time there, I saw that there was a very traditional approach to governance and there wasn't a lot of diversity there. So some people on the call may remember when Vicky Taylor and myself set up this thing called Springboard. So it was for directors who are under 40, and we really wanted to, at that stage, the only real organisation that reflected governance was the Institute of Directors. It's changed a lot, but back then it was very traditional and very staid, and anyone sort of almost under 60 probably didn't feel welcome there. So we set up Springboard, and we got about 3,000 members throughout the country and set up some chapters. That was my first foray into helping bring some diversity into governance. And then, as you point out, Rose, I set up in 2012 an entity or a platform called Appoint Better Boards, which has now grown to about 23,000 board members. And that's a platform for individuals to find board roles free of charge. And that was all driven around greater transparency into board roles. At one stage, you either had to be at the golf club or you had to be shoulder tapped and the like. And Appoint Better Boards was set up to try and bring greater transparency and diversity to board roles.
Nice. And for those of you interested, you can check Simon's profile out and Appoint Better Boards. I think we've got some links in the chat. And again, if you've got some questions, please post them in the chat function, or you can do the drop down box and ask myself or April as well. And we've got some people who want to connect straight away, Simon. So awesome audience with us today, and about finding that great board role. So Simon Wi Rutene, tēnā koe to you, iho. But you have a very interesting and fantastic career. So I'd like to see if you'd like to share a bit about your own personal story and success, but also where you've led to now in your Treasury appointment role.
Thank you, Rose, and good morning, everybody, again. It's great to be here. So I grew up in Rotorua, and I think Rose is living at Lake Okaraka, where our family home was, and went to Rotorua Lakes High School, where I didn't attend too much. I was busy wagging and trying to ski myself onto the Olympic ski team, which I managed to do. My mother's family is from Christchurch on the Port Hills, just by the Littleton Tunnel, and we had apricot and cherry orchards. So grew up working very hard. My dad was a lawyer and a Māori land lawyer, so have had a real steady background in the way Māori land trusts and entities work, and have been around that kōrero discussion all of my life, and also the importance of helping others and giving service to others. When I did eventually leave school, I went straight into my sports career, which spanned 4 Olympic Games. I think I was the flag bearer at 1988, which was something of a great privilege to represent New Zealand, of course, as well as family and friends, but on that world stage. So that gave me a great grounding in high performance and performance leadership. I was encouraged by my family to read and write French and German, which I took and did well at high school. And it gave me an appreciation of the culture of those societies that I was spending a lot of time in particular Europe. But my travels took me all through Asia, all through North America, Europe, and Australasia. So that was my first career. It's quite rough, I think, transferring out of a sports career, but it is made a lot smoother when you have a lot of other interests and roles in your life. I became a father then, and I was looking how I might develop my career. So I did my education a little bit backwards. I was shoulder tapped, essentially, by the Australian Institute of Sport and the New Zealand Academy of Sport to develop our high performance athletes unit. And at that time, I did a postgraduate degree in career counselling psychology and interviewed around about 1,000 of our top preeminent elite athletes, what they wanted to do in their career and their life. I realized that I really enjoyed finding out from people what they wanted to do and how I might be able to help them progress on their dreams and find their purpose. And that has stuck with me today. I then quickly, as I didn't know too many people in Wellington, started off in my not-for-profit community governance. I was the secretary and founding trustee of Wellington 2020 Communications Trust, which we uplifted lots of legacy hardware and computing and put that into Porirua and those other areas that required it at the time. I was also the president of the Wellington City Youth Gymnasium, and I have continued on not-for-profits. I'm currently the co-chair of the Audit and Risk for UNICEF New Zealand, and I'm also on the UNICEF New Zealand Children's Fund, which is an investment, and I've been on UNICEF for about 6 years. And I know how important community governance is, and it is actually just as hard as some of the commercial stuff. In between that, I qualified with a law degree. My speciality is Māori land, native title and constitutional law, but also in administration. And that's where I went to my first public service role as the Crown's negotiator, and I negotiated treaty claims. The last one's in Taranaki, and was brought in to do Tongariro National Park, which is still yet to go. And when they were doing Mangatū, my homelands, I had a conflict. So Treasury asked me to come and join them, which I was very glad to do because I had a business legal background in commercial areas, and I've become involved with many of our entities there. So that's me in a wrap up. I'm still a selector for the New Zealand ski and alpine teams, and I just recently returned from the Youth Olympic Games in Korea where I was the chairman of the jury. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. And don't know about everyone else on the call, but yeah, that probably is outstanding background and career from both Simon and Simon. But yeah, I love both of where you've got to now, because your whole kind of what you do is about giving back and helping others, which is just exactly what we need in community governance roles, about how do we shape our careers and how do we get the best out of what we can offer. So I think that's where we're kind of leading into with our first question, but it is 40% of our audience are saying that they're looking for another role, which means that they're experienced themselves and already sitting in some type of governance role. So what would we think about what makes a standout applicant? So if we're doing our standard CV and updating what skills we've got, but from your perspective, and I'll go with Simon T and then Simon W, this is how we're trying to figure out the Simon. But what's a standout applicant look like?
It's a really good question. Now, Simon will come from a Treasury, so probably from a Crown appointment lens. I look very much from a privately owned business lens, where I do a lot of my work, and I do a lot of work for Sport New Zealand and for local government as well. So I'll put that sort of lens on. Look, I'll be honest, as soon as I go to a CV and I see that, I do look for prior board experience, and that's where I would focus. Now, I often say, and I have a refrain, that no one was born with board experience, or no one was born with governance roles on their CV, so everyone had to get there. But first of all, I look at the quality of the board experience. If there is no board experience here, that's fine. As I said, people need their first role. I do look at then it goes straight to the work career. Where have you been spending your time in your day job, in your career? Has there been some stability there? Has there been progression? Has there been leadership roles? Has that role given people exposure to steering groups or to their board of directors, etc.? So I'm trying to look for that is that step from an executive role into a board role going to be one that is a natural transition because there's familiarity, or is it going to be a little bit risky there? A couple of other things. I think that every board member needs a level of financial competence. So I would like to have comfort that not everyone has to be a chartered accountant or have formal qualifications in that area. But I think around a board table, you can't rely on everyone else to be reading the financial statements. So I look for that. And particularly over recent years, the skills that make an applicant stand out, I'm looking more and more for those that understand or are comfortable with or can lead korero around te ao Māori and walking in that feeling comfortable in the Māori world. So those are just some things at the moment, and just going back to it, what makes a standout candidate does depend on what the organisation is looking for. And one standout candidate for organisation A may not be a standout candidate for organisation B.
Yeah, it does take a while to grow your career, doesn't it? But it's the first thing is to identify what's your interest. So what skill sets do you have, and what will keep you in this space for a long time? Because it's interest driven, really. Like Simon, you've had a huge career in the sports sector. Simon, you've obviously got skilled in business and driving growth as well. But myself has been on environmental boards and things like that. So it is around what's your interest base, and can you transition some of those interests into it? Because we have lots of sports associations, kind of crying out for skilled governance. So yeah, we often do suggest that first one is understand what you're looking for and what you can give back, and make sure that you're interested in the kaupapa and not just that CV tick box stuff. Simon Wi Rutene, what do you think about standout applicant? What kind of, if you're getting all these CVs and all these kind of approaches, what makes a standout candidate?
So just quickly to support what's already been said, what would stand out is governance experience, some financial experience and normal types of things. But what we're looking for is a real good match of the capabilities that you're going to show us in a CV that match the capabilities that is being sought for a particular commercial entity. I'll run through them quickly and then just give you a little bit of context on what our Crown commercial boards are. But firstly, we would look for people that have some familiarity with the public service. They understand that Crown relationship. They understand te tiriti. they are able to embrace diversity and inclusion, that accountability, adaptability, responsibility, and takes a wellbeing approach, because we are the Treasury and we have a wellbeing living standards framework. So for us, it's about raising the living standards of all. So that's how we link that way. More particularly in the type of skills, knowledge, and experience that someone's going to stand out on, is really that core governance, financial management side, which Simon T spoke about, but also risk management, knowledge of legal and compliance, having the ability to have that strategic approach and a broad perspective. We are looking for a governance focus, and I'll give us some more context now, because I think it's important that what I'm looking for is somebody that understands that as a Crown Director, they need to preserve and maximise the value of the Crown's investment in its companies and entities, and their contribution to wellbeing and economic performance. Our Crown entities, 21 of the commercial entities itself, have contributed 28,000 full-time employment jobs and $16 billion in revenue in 2022. And they've used assets at a value of more than 86 billion. And we, Treasury, administer appointments for 42 plus entities. So we're talking about really quite large commercial entities. It's the essential capabilities of those kind of attributes in many ways that enhance trust, culture, performance, and integrity, because the minister needs to have trust and confidence in everybody for what's going on. And when I talk about integrity, I'm talking about things like probity, fairness, honesty, and truthfulness. So many of those things go to the soft skills and the interpersonal skills and characters that we have. They can sometimes be a little bit harder to lift the lid on a CV. And that can be a bit difficult, but we have quite a few senior advisors now, 4, and a good core team at Treasury. We deal with applications. They come in and they might be numerous numbers, so essentially they may only have 2 to 5 minutes per CV to look at what they need to see. So my first tip was make sure that the capabilities that are sought are listed in how you meet them in your CV. I think also you need to have a really cohesive view of the board that you're looking for, and I would say engage in boards that who have missions that align with your values, and this is similar to what Rose is talking about, your interests, and because what you're doing is you're really aiming to understand that the board's purpose is growing the business and increasing that stakeholder value. And I might talk a little bit more about what Crown entities are, the types of commercial Crown entities, but I'll yield back first to you, Rose, until we're ready.
Thank you. Yeah, no, awesome. So I think I just wanted to pick up what you said about that character-based piece of the truthfulness, integrity, that kind of mana, right? And you'll see it in some of these top appointed board roles or chairs, and where you can go a bit awry. Sometimes it's been social media skills or saying things, so it's the character of the person that is just as equal to their skill set. So that can somewhat be a bit hard to share in your CV about, everyone's like, I am trustworthy, I am, I do have integrity. How do I put this on my CV? But it's probably a little bit of that networking piece as well to say, so-and-so knows you and can back you. So some of your referees probably go a bit
just
there.
jumping in there, I do think that it's really, really important to understand that the CV is there to get you the interview. The CV isn't there to get you a role. I haven't heard of anything in the last 20 years that I've been doing board appointments for someone to be appointed directly off a CV. There is always some form of at least face-to-face, if not Zoom, etc. So I think that's one tip for creating CVs, and I do a lot of CV reviews. I've done about 600 or 700 over the last few years. That if you try and put too much into your CV and think that this is your one chance of getting the role, then it's going to be too complicated, and the jewels will be lost amongst the noise. So the CV is basically around your technical skills, your harder skills, your functional experience, your sector experience, maybe a little bit about the softer side. But if someone says they have high integrity, or they're a great communicator, or they're, you know, fun, I'll say your CV is irrelevant. I'll wait for the interview and I'll judge that in person. Okay? So just feel that there's always going to be the second stage of the process where the softer sides, the interpersonal sides, the authenticity and stuff will come through at interview rather than just the CV.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, obviously, to get your foot in the door and grow that governance career. It's a little bit about what we are interested to know from both of you, but around how transferable do you think the community organisations, not-for-profits, for purpose, how transferable do you think our skills are when you would say from sector-wide, we're responsible for the same thing, growing organisations, finding lots of funding and money and sustaining our management teams and growing. Where do you rate this in terms of skill set from a not-for-profit board?
Maybe I'll go. Okay, thank you, Simon. And I agree. What is on the CV is much more about your experience, and sometimes the character softer skills are best judged in that face-to-face. So I always think it's a good idea, if you do get an interview, is to actually have an interview plan, what you want to discuss, and be able to show you understand the purpose of the organisation and how you would add value. Coming back to what is, I think, knowledge that you would need to have in common, whether you're a trustee or in community governance or on commercial, but it really comes back down to meetings in many ways, because a lot of your business is conducted in meetings. So things that you'd need to know is in your essential documentation, constitution, your board charters, those types of things. You're looking for notice for convening meetings. You'd need to know about quorum, the agenda, know how to debate, motions and those types of things, your resolutions, how you would conduct that, voting if you're required to, thinking about proxies. We still have proxies. We still have shareholder resolutions that are passed in by ministers at AGMs. What committees, the role of a chairman, the role of secretary, and the importance of minutes. So those are really governance skills of meetings that all organisations will have in common. It gets a little bit more prescribed, I think, from Crown entities because of the different legislative frameworks that sit behind different types of entities. And I'll quickly talk about what those entities are for us, but we have state-owned enterprises. They're Crown-owned companies that operate as successful businesses. You know, they're meant to be as profitable as comparable businesses that aren't owned by the Crown, but they're also required to be good employers and to exhibit social responsibility. We have a few of those. Transpower is a good example of that. So is Kiwi Rail. We also have things like Crown financial institutions. We currently have 5 of those. That's the New Zealand Super Fund, through to Government Superannuation Fund Authority, National Provident Fund, these big kind of investment trusts. Crown-owned companies, they're established by the Crown to further certain policy. And because they're a company, they would also then come under the Companies Act, and the Companies Act itself does prescribe the duties of what good company directors need and require. So I would I would expect in my directors that they do know where those are, and most of them do. We have sort of 2 of those categories, that's Crown entity companies and Public Finance Schedule Act 4A's companies, which are all in legislation. And then there are other types of companies which are wholly owned by the Crown, and shares may only be held by our ministers. So when we talk about expectations of our ministers, it's because the minister is the shareholder of those companies. So that's why that's important. And those are things like Radio New Zealand and TV New Zealand. Companies that are listed on the 4A are usually They're companies that aren't state-owned enterprises but appropriate to establish because joint ownership's necessary or desirable, or they're materially distinct from other things. And an example of that is Raupainga or Takaro. So that's a Schedule 4A company. Then we have our statutory Crown entities, which are ACC, and they also have their requirements set out in legislation. And we have our mixed ownership models like Air New Zealand. So I just thank you for indulging that, because I wanted to cover off the types of entities, because they are all different and they all have different legislation that apply to them, and that can make a difference in how you would set out what you're bringing and how you would add value to a particular entity. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's really great, Simon, because you're addressing some of the common principles of governance, aren't you? So there's some commonalities that we have regardless, so minute taking, proxies, if you're corporate societies, membership models, that kind of thing. So you can highlight those if you've already been a board member or chairperson. You can highlight that you've got all those kind of experience and you're overseeing in that strategic space. You can pull that out. But equally, we've got a couple of kind of comments and feedback in the chat around if you don't have a role and you're looking for it, you're not an accountant, not a lawyer, how can you shape up to get that new role? It might be something in your day job that you're overseeing. You might be taking some records, or you're managing some funds or something like that, or contract management. So yeah, it might be shaping up your current CV, which Simon Telfer started with, around executive into governing roles, but taking what you're doing in your day job and shaping it to look for your first board appointment. So yeah, thank you for going through that with us. I think there's a question here around, can you be on a Crown board if you're a public servant? I know the answer for this, but since we've got Simon here, he can answer it.
The answer is yes, but there is no double dipping. So ministers will actually, at their leave, allow some of our public servants to be on boards. It's quite rare, but I think it's a developing trend, because that type of expertise that's very specific may be missing on the capabilities of the board as a whole, and bringing in someone that might have very specific knowledge. And there's lots of rising skills that are to be found more in executive level. There's these new ones like, AI or other types of skills where people are, through disruption, learning these. So they're not necessarily held by some of our more senior governors. They are still continuously learning. And I would always say continuously learning is important. So the short answer is yes. But you would either take leave or you don't get your remuneration.
Yeah, we've got a question here from Leah around this, actually. Simon Telfer, you might want to respond, but interested in the value of volunteer experience against paid experience. So if you're saying you've got a paid role, does that look better, come across better than voluntary, which we're all volunteers on our community organisations?
If you're a trustee and you were doing trustee, I don't think anyone's going to say we're more likely to appoint you just because you got paid 5,000 or 10,000. It is the substance of the role that is important. So where it is important is for the individual, because you're giving up your time, you're contributing. There is an opportunity cost if you're attending meetings, or you're having to provide childcare, or having to travel, etc. So I think that's when the paid component comes in. That's important, but it's less important to other organisations whether you were paid or not. Just going back to your question, Rose, around, look, I've seen maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I would suggest that not-for-profit experience wasn't probably as well recognised as it is now. But I think it is, in the commercial world, there is an understanding that sometimes not-for-profit environments are more complex and more challenging board dynamics than there is in commercial organisations. So I think it sits a lot better. I think also one of the valuable things are that a lot of commercial directors also have not-for-profit board roles as well. So when you're getting around that table and people are seeing you in action, and particularly the chair, has seen you, then they can then be an advocate for you. So I think building your network is really, really important. Just be careful though. I do see some CVs or some backgrounds where someone's on their third or their fourth or their fifth not-for-profit or community role, and I'll be honest, it is very, very difficult to transition, and there is probably in reality a pigeonholing that is the sector that you are passionate about and where you are contributing. So if you're wanting to get a more balanced portfolio over time, I would, take your first not-for-profit role, absolutely. Your second one would ideally be maybe at a national level or be in a very high-profile not-for-profit brand. That's cool. If you are then wanting to go into the commercial world, getting a third not-for-profit role, there's always exceptions, but a rule of thumb would be you probably wouldn't want to start going down that track too far. That might make the transition across to commercial roles a little more difficult down the track.
That's food for thought, I think, for people thinking about how to grow their governance career. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we see too, though, is that most directors, say, in working in Simon's Wi Rutene space, they still hold not-for-profit board roles. So they're still engaged in community organisations. So you can grow your community governance skill set and still give back and still grow your, whether you want to go into paid directorships, more senior governing roles. So I think we do keep a lot of people in our community, in our sector for a long time. So that's huge value. So I think you'd always see that, actually, even if you try to move, if you wanted to move in and get paid, you'd still want to give back to our community organisations who need it. Another thing I just want to raise around our sector, look, I get a lot of organisations looking for board members, just as you guys do, but I also have a lot of feedback around current organisations, current boards, where their board members aren't always participating, contributing, reading board papers, engaging as much as they should. Now, I just wonder whether it's something that needs to be addressed within our sector, because we've got people here online who are looking for their new first board role. We've also got a lot of people who are sitting on organisations, possibly not participating as much as they should. I think that comes about with succession planning as well, because people are looking to grow the talent. But if you've got inactive board members, what do you do to try and bring in new people who really want these new roles and really want to contribute? What do you think? Simon Wi Rutene, do you want to?
Look, it's Simon Telfer. Look, it's really is the role of the chair to do that. The chair is the conductor of the board and really should have the EQ and the ability to have those conversations that are required. I do feel that a number of director or board members, particularly in the not-for-profit space, care so passionately about it. They feel that they almost get blinded after 8, 10, 12 years that it almost becomes habitual, and they almost feel that by stepping back, they would really be letting the organisation down. And then there needs to be some korero around that by saying, actually, by letting go, you're actually going to help the organisation flourish. So I think it needs to be led by the chair. I think if you are in an organisation like that, getting an external perspective and doing a light board review can be helpful to get some insights, and then that to be the catalyst for some conversation around the board table. I think the bringing in sometimes of a board intern or a future director or a board observer can be helpful, because it does bring some new insights and some new energy, and it does show to somebody else that there is actually a pipeline here of someone else that maybe reminds them of themselves from many years ago. And I think that's where it comes to networking as well, that if you see a board that you're passionate about and you believe that you can contribute and lead conversations and add value to that board, then I think that rather than waiting mysteriously to be tapped on the shoulder or for that board to be advertised, that board role to be advertised, it is to approach the chair and to say, hey, I do have a genuine affinity with this organisation and its purpose, and I do have a background that I think would be really helpful, and make sure that they are aware that there is pipelines of interested individuals, and that could then lead to someone else sort of saying, okay, my time is up.
Yeah, it's a bit of what was in our chat actually around if you're not particular skill set like accountant or lawyer, and you're wanting to get onto your first new role, that's a great way to see if the board's open to that. Can you sit in on some meetings, observe process, and get a taste for it? Because we want to encourage people to come on and sustain these careers for over a long time and give back to our community organisations. So yeah, being a bit more open to, people might not have the fit, but they've got the time, energy, and the real want to give back. So that's a great point. Simon, did you have any comments?
So this is a really interesting conversation, and for us, we do need directors that possess those relevant capabilities to get both the performance and leadership performance from the chair, and I'll come to the chair in a second. But you know, good boards really, and this has been acknowledged for a long time and more recently through research, that they require a diverse range of perspectives. We don't, in commercial entities at Treasury, appoint just chartered accountants or lawyers. In fact, we are looking for diverse perspectives, those attributes that really function well, as I've spoken before, that you can show you have transferable skills that enhance trust, performance, culture, and integrity. So how you might tell that narrative is really important. I think I'll just quickly talk about some of the critical chair attributes that can help this conversation. And I agree with Simon T. That is the domain of the chair, to follow up after meetings, to say, if, hey, I see you've still got some concerns, what's concerning you, or I've got some concerns. It requires really courageous conversations. Chairs need to lead a high-performing board. Of course, the relationship with the CEO and the chair is very important to hold them to account. So sometimes the dynamics between board members and management might be the concern. So the chair is able to facilitate how that might be improved, or to alleviate any of the tension that might exist there through some education opportunities. I think you know, it's really important that those enduring relationships with those stakeholders are enhanced, and sometimes the behaviours of different directors may be working against what stakeholders want. So that might then be a conversation. And the awareness part for a director is self-awareness is really important. And I really believe in the question, as I've seen some very good directors say, they feel am I still adding value? Am I still making a good contribution? And they know that when they aren't, and they need to allow refreshment of that board. A good director would always notice that. Others seem to hang in for grim death. But the chair in the term of ends is able to see what's coming up. They should have that conversation to say, you know, you haven't stepped up, or you are stepping up. And that chair needs to also inspire really high standards in all of the board members, and they need to commit to supporting new and future director talent. So I think that's the ecosystem around that issue.
Yeah, and our chairs play a huge role in shaping culture and value base. But I just want to add too, though, about that premise of the not-for-profit and growing a career in that. But I would actually say I would think that serving in community organisations, it already states a piece that you've already got a lot of values-based and integrity, because a lot of what the work that we do on these organisations, it's a huge amount of time commitment. After hours, we often don't get paid, if anything, sometimes in our chair roles, trustees, boards. So I think that demonstrates straight away, like, very strong values, community-based premise about your character. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in, because this is why we're here.
Add to the ad. I've been in community governance in my alpine skiing and snow sports for 40 years, selecting teams. I've told them that somebody else has to take over. They're not letting go. So it can be really hard to transfer out of those things. So sometimes, you know, the time to go would have been much sooner, but there's nothing else there. So I absolutely look at your community experience. It shows me character, it shows me what you work hard for, and creates a conversation and narrative that a skilled interviewer in due diligence interviews is able to give that candidate an opportunity to then demonstrate how they can add value with those skills and experience that they have. I always say it's a little bit about, and we'll remind ourselves that sort of dream that a lot of blokes have, and maybe women now in the military, to serve on the SAS. It's at the pinnacle, but when they go through the selection, they quickly realise that the glamour of it is just hard work. And when a director realises, whether it's community or commercial, that actually it doesn't live up to the, it's more hard work than they ever thought, sometimes that causes them to then not contribute because it is hard. So I would just say you should always give your best and perform to the best of your ability. Use your chair to check in and your other board members to get soundings, and become more self-aware all the time about how people are experiencing you on the board. A lot of it comes down to personalities and how things are working out. And if that's an easy to solve concern, then the boards can get back on with the business.
Yes, it is around that huge amount of civic service. So what community governance and what we are here for is championing our sector. So because we've, like I said, we've got so much value, so much time giving back. And so it's a wonderful space and place to be in. So I was just thinking too, what do you both think some of the critical skills, governing skills is going to be moving in the next few years? I kind of say that because we've had some huge impacts happen. Our COVID, Cyclone Gabrielle, cost of living crisis, like we couldn't be any more stretched than we are currently at the moment. That's putting a lot of pressure on our time availability. People, might be stressed about giving back their time and making huge financial decisions as well, sometimes under duress and haste. But with all these kind of things happening in our space, what do you think are going to be some of the most critical skill sets, attributes that we're going to need in the next few years? What do you guys think?
Well, I'll jump in there, and I am using a lens through. I'm involved in local government because I chair the community board for Wanaka and the Upper Clutha, so that's sort of given me another lens to look through, as well as that commercial lens. I think you can type these sort of things into ChatGPT and end up with your list. But here's three things I'd like to challenge everyone to sort of think about: is organisations, their ability to be responsive to change. Okay, so that's market change, that's crisis, it's the ability, and I know we use the word agile, even though I didn't want to use it because I know that has been thrown around a lot, but it is that ability for organisations to respond timely and quickly and courageously, because that may mean eating up some of your own business or reinventing your model or whatever. So first things, responsiveness to change. I think the use of data is really, really interesting. There is how as an organisation do we leverage the data? How do we leverage our membership and our community, and how do we get that rich data? But how do we do that ethically? How do we do that so it doesn't compromise our values? How does it so it doesn't exploit the people we're getting the data from? So very tough line. There's so much benefit that can be gained through data, but it's also sometimes does come at a cost. The third thing and third and final thing is just organisations, this concept of adaptive governance, and whether that traditional model is actually is the best for that organisation and that sector or that entity going through that change. So I think it's when you ask about what our skills need in organisations going forward, I think an openness to looking at that model and that construct and saying, is what's got us here as far as the way we govern and how we go about that, is that going to be the best model for the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Oh, I definitely think you've highlighted something, Simon, that I 100% think is going to affect our sector, which is in those membership organisations and corporate societies predominantly, because we do have a change in our demographics and people's time into committees and membership models. So yeah, we are going to see quite a big shift into that with these branches and setups, because just because the way that life is changing and our time and commitment to give back to these things. So yeah, it's going to impact. So thanks for those 3 tips. Hopefully we can get some of those into our chat. And Simon, so what do you think? What's coming?
Yeah, that's who knows what's coming. We can see there's a lot of soft rising skills through disruption, and as a result of having to be adaptable. And Simon makes a really great point. Is the entity still fit for purpose? Will its mandate be refreshed? Obviously, that happens to some of our Crown entities on a regular basis. So it is necessary to be very adaptable. I think if I'm looking at what 3 core skills are still required, we'll always need a strategic approach and broad perspectives. And look, leadership, collaboration, and problem solving are huge, because there's so many problems out there, and we need to be able to cooperate and have leadership. And that brings me to something that might be on point with community governance as well as commercial, and that's what we'd call, tikanga rangatira, the practices of someone that is well versed in leadership, and their performance measured in confidence a community has in them. So being able to have skills that will engender confidence in your leaders is really important. And some of those things that they might need to possess in order for the themes to help them with those key decision-making requirements in the uncertainty of tomorrow. You need to be really intergenerationally visionary. You have to be a community builder. You need to be culturally grounded. You need to be really adept at those relationships. An influential communicator. And you really need that multifaceted acumen, not just law or accounting, but there are other acumens there that might be technical specialist expertise that only you have, that you can bring. So some of the other themes, I think I would agree that we need to get ready about data and privacy. We need to be up with those, because there's something that boards can struggle with. There's such topics as data sovereignty and who owns data for what reason. So they're really tricky for a lot of governors to understand. And most of the governors are looking at new courses of that. There's artificial intelligence. Will it take over the humanity piece that's required? I don't know. I don't think so. But it's getting better and better all the time at the maths, but it's not so great at some of the other functions yet. Yeah, I think that's it mostly. I've probably forgotten some obvious ones, but
Oh, I think those were great. I mean, tikanga rangatira tanga and leadership and performance. I think those are fantastic words. But I'd encourage people too, if you're already on a board, but you haven't moved into the chair role, like that's a great space to be in as a leader of the organisation, and your skill set really expands because you're moving into that community builder, influential. You can make and shape how the organisation comes across and builds up your network. So yeah, if you're thinking about growing your governance, have a look and step into the chair role. So I'd encourage lots of you to do that too. Data and privacy and AI. So we've got a board talk coming up this year. It is around AI and tech, because how we can actually use it, I think, to our advantage for our sector. And I say that because it could free us up to do all the community action deliverable roles rather than all the same commonalities we have. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. I've got one last question before we go, because we've got about 5 minutes, but it is around what would you recommend in undertaking governance training courses for the development? You both would have things that you can offer our audience today, but some might be some that you can afford, maybe. Some might just be some other free things that you can start out with. So Simon, we know where to go to see you, and we know Simon at Treasury too, but have you got
so I got a couple of
anything to highlight?
Simon W. Can. Look, if you're looking for board roles, join Appoint Better Boards. Obviously, you know, we promote about 30 board roles at any one time. We've helped put about 1,300 people into board positions over its life. So, you know, it's a reasonably successful entity. So appointbetterboards.com or .co.nz. Secondly, I think Board Pro have got a great series of free webinars. So if you're looking for free governance advice and webinars, etc., check out Board Pro. I like BOMA. They're based down in Ōtautahi. The BOMA Leadership, so BOMA, the BOMA Leadership course that they put there. They did do a transformational directors course, but they've sort of woven that into their general leadership course there. That's a 2-day course, and that will require some investment. And then just my only other comment is I do feel that people do the 5-day IOD course a little bit too early in their careers, and people think that that is the ticket to, if I do the 5-day course and spend the $8,000 and give up 5 days, I will get board roles, and that's not the case. My guidance is always that that's a gold standard course, absolutely great qualification, but I only encourage people to do it when they've got 2 or more board roles at the time. So you can apply that learning, you can apply that knowledge, and you're actually not sort of hoping that it's going to be the entree into some board appointments. So there's some insights for you as we go to head towards 1 o'clock.
Cool, thank you. And I know you also do a bit with sports for women, don't you? So there's a kind of bespoke program.
So Sport New Zealand and Appoint Better Boards and myself have had a strong partnership for 12 or so years. So if you look in the sports tutor, learning and development platform there as well, lots of learning there. You will see me on a couple of webinars there, but there's probably much more interesting content there as well.
We've also Community Governance Aotearoa have a program out now. So if you're a chair or you know someone who's a chairperson, we have our Tuakana Attainer program that's free. It's about 6 to 8 months. It's fantastic cohort. It's our 3rd year. So check that out too. And over to you, Simon. Simon and Simon, it's been fun having you guys.
Thank you, Rose. And I'm sorry I suddenly have got a little bit dark, but I'm sure you can hear me. So that's great. Look, we've covered a lot today. I've talked to you about really important behavioural attributes and characteristics. And I think that's important. You've got 2 minutes, maybe even less, to create a rapport when you're in there. So it's important to be able to show you know, that you're empathic, you've got emotional intelligence, you're a good listener and clear communicator. I like to see diverse perspectives in the way that you're thinking based on your life experience and demographics. So those are, tell me about yourself, kind of where you can demonstrate your behaviour. I want to give a quick plug because for our Treasury commercial entities, I'm also very passionate about our not-for-profit, but candidates are really required to join the Treasury database and complete a record if they're going to be considered for board roles. So do that. Our position specs are posted on our website and Community Governance and LinkedIn. It'll have the info for you, what is being sought. So I think that's good. We also have on our website our ownership expectation manual, and this helps you. It's not a course, but I think you could read it and make yourself comfortable. It's going to tell you about the role of ministers. It's going to tell you about the role of the Treasury in part 1. It will cover off things like board duties, commitment to those duties, and attendance, your committees, your subsidiary boards, board conduct and ethics, when to get professional and legal advice, liabilities and indemnities, conflicts of interests, and other issues, including board performance evaluations. And I think there's really good information there that is tailored to the different legislative framework that our entities fall under. And yeah, the ministers' expectations are also set out in their letters of expectations, which are online. And you can go and see those at companies' entities. They'll give you an insight into the strategic objectives that are set out in their statements of performance. And as a result of that, you're going to be able to then gain insights yourself into the skills and capability mix that a board needs and the contributions that they're making. And I think that's where the nuance in governance is to find out how you can make yourself a unique and valuable place there. I'm all up for continued education and improvement, and there is a lot of great courses out there. But we do have on our website, Treasury, visit that to register on our database. And I'd also say the Public Service Commission has tons of resources on topics that are in common for all types of directors. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you.
I think it's fantastic, and thank you to all the lovely comments coming in about thanking Simon, April and myself. We love having you guys with us, so stay tuned throughout the year. Our next board talk is going to be about charities, charity law. But just saying that, I think the thinking around having both of you here with us is to explore different type of governance and understand the legal, the principles, the constitutions, get to know your deed. I mean, it's just number one. So it's good to have you guys here so we can explore our thinking in this space. Because like we said, most directors, even if you go on to have some big roles, always have one foot in the door still with community governance roles. So big thanks to our team and Simon. Thank you to everyone for being here with us. So ka kite anō until April. So, mā te wā.
Bye-bye.